Hey everyone, Happy New Year. We're really excited to share with you an update from the land here in East Tennessee where we've made the Haven Village our home. And I'm Imani and this is River, in
River.
case you didn't know. And we're going to actually share a little presentation. See my busy screen there. Just to give you an update on the process and the progress of how we've come to the Haven Village in East Tennessee. It's been quite the journey and we have a lot to share, but I think we've been able to kind of put it in a somewhat of a concise manner so that you guys can follow along and hopefully be inspired with the model that we're creating here.
Nice.
So we want to officially welcome you to the Haven Village.
And this really is a synopsis, and all the parts and pieces might not be in the exact order they happened, but we did our best to put this kind of a story together so you could get an understanding of things as
And
best as possible.
the timeline,
And the
how we got
timeline.
here.
Yeah. But there's a lot more depth to this, of course.
So one of the things some of you may know, River and I met a little over 3 years ago. Not quite 3 years in person, but we both came together around a shared vision and really knew that we had a mission to do together. And so we've really been focused on that since the beginning. And so we were traveling around extensively, and we knew that we were looking for a home that would be the home of the Haven Earth Trade School, and it would incorporate the healthy hemp homes that River, designs and builds as a bioarchitect. And we were looking for some really specific things, and we had some strategic steps along the way to get there. So one of those was obviously we were doing the hands-on workshops, teaching people how to build healthy hemp homes. And the last one was with the tiny hemp home. Some of you have been following. It's in the picture up there in the top, not in its final phase, but just after being hemped with the group of people that we trained to build that. But we were establishing really strategic partnerships locally where we land, and obviously with people like John and Rebecca Bush, and even the folks that when we were staying in Texas, where
Kingsbury.
we were starting to put into action some of the things that we knew that we were going to have to implement when we actually found our home. So the Mittlighter gardening method, we started raising chickens. We started hanging out with our friends at Habitable Spaces, learning how to care and milk goats, bake bread, all of those kinds of things that are the skill sets that you need when you really are thinking about returning to the land and building that muscle of resiliency. And so just to kind of put a timeline to that, last year, this time, we were, visiting by the San Marcos River that we were living on in Kingsbury, Texas. And we had already had a conversation with the land steward for here in Tennessee, but we had no idea where it was going exactly, because there were several different possibilities as we were toggling back and forth between Texas and Tennessee. So in February, we actually met with the land steward in Colorado, where he was living and building a hemp home. And in March, we actually ended up coming to see the land.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little more.
Yeah, and the timeline, maybe you want to expand upon it a little bit, but really just to kind of backtrack a little bit, really the mission has been to the mission of Haven Earth is to establish and connect the safe havens focused on education, innovation, and intentional socio-economics that support an empowered, purposeful, and creative return to the land in abundant, agrocentric ways of living. So that's a bit of a mouthful.
And one of the things that we were doing last year, as we were also speaking at the Greater Reset, Exit Build, and other places, was we were also hosting Return to the Land events, bringing together speakers and recording that and documenting those onto our online platform. So for us, it's been really important to document our progress along the way.
Right. And we've been doing that along the way before we even got to this land, with the private model, setting up Haven Earth, PMA.
So we established Haven Earth PMA, which is a private membership association, when we first met. So that was over 2 years ago. And then we set up the land trust this past May when we started looking at really making an offer for this property in Tennessee. And so we have multiple organizational aspects with the working with the Ministry of Nature, which we set up as a 508 Ministry of Nature, and our PMA. And we actually have a second PMA for the biohouse consultations and design services. But that's a really significant piece for how we came to the land. I know a lot of people are curious and starting to look at these models, which are actually old models that are just coming back into our awareness. But for us, keeping this property and keeping in the trust and keeping our model in the private realm was absolutely critical and key. This is not a typical development model that's phased as something else. Let me just go back. Hold on. We were really trying to make, you can see my, there we go. To really show how this can be done.
Yeah, and I think we didn't want to do it in the typical way. There is a way of doing these types of, let's say, eco developments, which is kind of like an investor model, and we had kind of played with that idea, working with John Rebecca and some others, and probably in Texas. But for us, it didn't feel right. It felt kind of wasn't in alignment, let's say, with our mission. And so coming into the private realm and taking things out of the jurisdiction, let's say, of the old system was really where we wanted to be. And so that set us up.
Well, we've always talked about Haven Earth being the bridge between the old world and the new world. And so, I mean, we feel like that's part of our mission, is to show how we're making that transition and building a parallel system, right? So we've been building our membership for the past 2 years or longer, since we set up our PMA. And many of you have been, involved at different parts of the journey. What we really started honing in on in the spring was establishing this vetting process for the residential membership. And so we involved members as being a part of this land, so that we could actually have the infrastructure and participation from the beginning. So like River was saying, if you're doing a typical development, sometimes people bring people in after the fact, after they have everything figured out. And we do have a lot figured out, but we also felt like it was really important to involve our members through those various stages. So when we came out to the land, after we had spoke to the land stewards in February, we came to the first land visit in March with some of our members. River came back again in April, to kind of take in more of the understanding of the land from what he needed to do with kind of the conceptual master plan. And then in June, we brought our next group of members to the land as we were making the offer to purchase the land. So it's been a really, really involved process every step of the way.
Yeah. And, prior to this land, we'd been traveling quite extensively and doing consultations for people to help them, who'd purchased land or who were going to purchase land, to help them figure out a strategy. And also in our own efforts to find land, we'd been looking in Tennessee and Texas specifically, even as far as Maine, we had been looking at land, and we created a checklist, which was really important, and it's more extensive than this, really about finding land that was in these existing agricultural areas was really important, because as you all know, the food systems are challenged. Obviously we wanted to find a freedom loving area, as much as possible, water resources, existing infrastructure on the land. The idea of coming back to the land, to a raw piece of land, it's great. We can all have kind of visions. We go visit land, we can have kinds of fantasies, but just my background, 20 plus years in the architectural industry and construction, I know what it takes and how much is involved. And when you kind of move to, a lot of people just move into the land in an RV, and building their house and taking several years to just build a house. We don't have that kind of time. So we wanted an existing infrastructure. We wanted good accessibility. We want to be able to get materials. You don't want to be so far out there that you can't actually make it work. We really fortunate with the location that we found here. And the limited zoning and regulations was really important. I've done projects out in California, and it's 2 years in the process to just try and get a permit for an addition on a house, let alone doing something like we're doing here. So that's really an important factor. And also the off-grid feasibility. You might find a piece of land that's in the middle of the woods and there's no access to get even sun in there. So really finding all of these things on one piece of land was an amazing accomplishment. One of our members actually brought this land to our attention way back just over a year ago. And when we came to the land, it's
Well, and we had traveled to this area
Mhm.
extensively for other clients of Rivers looking at their land. So we were familiar with this area, and it was actually an area that we intuitively felt connected to. But the fact that it was right on the border of the national forest, but in a accessible location, but remote in the way that it's positioned on the land, so that there is a true sense of privacy. It's like in its own
yeah, it's kind
valley.
of nestled in its own valley, down a dead end road. So there's not a lot of traffic. And as you can see, this was the initial infrastructure when I came to the land in
This is what we saw when we came
yeah,
in last March.
and then coming back in April, documenting this, taking drone footage, and really spending some time on the land to understand how it's functioning. That's really part of my process. And seeing this existing infrastructure, the inherited infrastructure was really important. There's to the left on the screen, there's a 10,000 square foot pole barn, which was built by the previous owner. There's a workshop space. There's some hoop house frames there that obviously hadn't been used for a long time. And there was an existing farmhouse and a commercial kitchen with a walk-in cooler outside. And then about a 10,000 kilowatt solar setup, amongst some other things, including 4 wells on the property, numerous ponds, one of them being spring fed. So really, there's a lot to offer here.
Sorry about that.
Jumping ahead a little bit.
There we go.
And and maybe put that video on. Actually kind of goes over and gives you a little overview of the land, so you can see where
Yeah,
we're at. And we'd put that together prior to us coming getting onto the land and
right when we
to,
were making
to
the offer.
yeah.
So some of you have seen it.
Hi, everyone. This is Amani River from Haven Earth PMA. We've been on the search for the perfect location for the Haven Earth Trade School and Residential Village and are thrilled to announce that we finally found it in East Tennessee. It's been quite the journey to find a property that meets our specific criteria, working in partnership with existing land stewards and the land itself.
The Haven Earth model is not your typical development model. We design with nature in mind to create places that encourage a natural flow of meaningful relationships and joyful work on the land. Beauty is key to fostering appreciation and all for life. Beauty inspires us to connect with ourselves and nature and supports a more organic way of communing together.
A critical piece for us is to deconstruct our ideas around ownership and the illusion of security by operating in the private realm as a private membership association. And one way we're doing this is by putting the land in a common law, irrevocable land trust. This shared model allows us to move towards a more centropic, decentralized system so we can build a parallel society where we can all thrive.
And not only will we be building out a new way, but we will be designing our dwellings with healthy natural building materials that are non-toxic, mold-free, and pest and fire resistant. In the end, our homes are the heart of life. And when our environments nourish us, we are more willing and able to participate in creating a vibrant and abundant community life.
In addition to healthy hemp homes, food security during these times of transition is a primary part of our equation. Regenerative agricultural practices and a cooperative food production model ensures food sovereignty for all of our members. Taking back our food systems by growing our own food is one of the most empowering and liberating things that we can do during these times.
And returning to a localized agricultural model not only ensures our freedoms, for the freedom of the future generations to come. Our hands-on educational model brings together master builders and artisans passionate about teaching real skills and trades that give a sense of purpose while growing the workforce of the future.
Our focus on education and entrepreneurship allows us to not only grow our own economy, but stimulate the local community as well. It's essential to develop partnerships with others around us to ensure a truly resilient future.
Yes, if you've been dreaming about this new world as we have, now is the time to come together around a shared purpose to create this visionary model of the future.
We invite you to join us as we build out the Haven Village in Tennessee.
So that was May, and around that same time, we were putting in the infrastructure that's somewhat invisible, right? That was the trust. We started organizing with some of the first phase of residential members to put together what we call the Haven Village Living Agreement, which is how we are going to be on the land together. We created the terms around that for people that were new to some of these kinds of concepts. Many of you have been studying and looking into natural law. So it was a learning curve, and it was a participatory process of how we were going to make that transition onto the land. And the conceptual master plan River was working on simultaneously. That's sort of what he was talking about, and you saw a little bit in the video.
Yeah.
This is really actually quite on point. There's been a few adjustments, but it's definitely one of River's skill sets to kind of intuitively connect with what the land is speaking, not just in this case but with all of his clients. Continues to amaze me.
Well, and what was really important was to really understand what's the carrying capacity here of the land, and the functionality of things, because sometimes you might find a piece of land that looks great, but when you start to actually lay out your intention, your vision, it might not actually work with that land due to, you know, it might be a narrow lot, there might be only a certain amount of access on that lot. So there was a lot of points that, you know, when you start to get into the design process, that get raised. And really it was kind of one of them. Typically what we found looking at land is the more we got into it, the more challenges there was to what we wanted to do. You know, kind of like the first time you meet somebody, you know, you're like, oh, they're great, and then, you know, by the 10th time you're like, wow, they're really annoying. It was like the same with the land. It happens a lot. Is that you think in one way in the beginning, and then over time you realize it's not the right piece. But actually every time we came back to land, the more I looked into it, the more in depth I got with it, the more it was right. It was the right piece of land for this. And then at that point brought in a Vastu consultant, and really because I feel my knowledge is limited in some ways, and I wanted to bring in that element to affirm or to give me a different perspective on that. And what I found through that process of the Vastu, as you can see here on the right hand side of the picture, was these areas are the prime locations to build upon for residential or for community structures, etc. And they just happened to be exactly where I had felt intuitively worked. And also it happened to be the areas that had already been previously cleared on the land, because the land had way back when had been owned by a paper company who'd logged quite a amount of the land, which had become pasture land. And so it kind of really worked out in that way. We didn't have to do any clearing, and I don't even think we've had to take one tree down. I think one came down when we were building the pond, but that was about it. So you know, the Vastu was a really key element for us. And not only that, but we strongly believe that anchoring in the intention of what we're doing, the intentionality of what we're doing here is really important. We talk about this culture of care a lot, because what I've always experienced in construction is like the more you care about the process, the more actually you open up a relationship, you open up a dialogue. And so doing the research, looking at maps, bringing in the Vastu, all of these things create an opening and opportunity for communication with the land, and the land reciprocates. You start to get information. It doesn't mean the land's talking to you, but things show up in certain ways and inspirations come that help to guide the process. And the Vastu really works in that way too. It's obviously based on, kind of it's in the Indian art of architecture, the science of architecture is what they call it. Um, and it's really looking at the flows of energy on the land, the orientations of slopes, and then the Vastu structure itself, which is a primary one of the first main structures we're going to put on the land, is really about anchoring in a certain vision. And so we've gone through that process, and that'll be one
We
of the
actually
first
call it
structures.
the Hempel, and we'll be building it in the spring equinox. It harnesses the cosmic energies and the intentions of what we're here to do with this specific, in partnership with this specific piece of land. The Vastu land activation, this is kind of jumping ahead in our timeline. We had our members come out, so they came out in June, and then they came out in July for a work week, and then again in September, once River and I were officially moved onto the land, and we did a ceremony on the fall equinox.
The Bhumi Puja.
So that was to set the actual location of that structure, where it's going to be built on the land. And so that was an important process to involve our members in setting that intention as well. And this is a little compilation video just to see, it was really sweet coming together. I don't know if this one has volume, but this is sort of the visuals of this. What I love about some of this footage that we're showing you is the different seasons. So this is sort of the fall season, right? We started when we did the first pictures was the spring. Now we're in the winter, so things are a lot, more not as many leaves on the trees. But this was really beautiful time to bring our members here because it was so lush, so abundant. The fall harvest, we have an incredible Mennonite market where we were getting amazing amounts of food to be able to make food and eat together, which I think is really important. I ran a cafe for a decade where I homeschooled my 6 kids. And so I really feel like food is what brings us together. So and I know many of you are foodies too, but it's really important to have those kind of experiences of being together. We're not really focused, and we're not an intentional community. What we're focused on is bringing people together to have experiences of community, and being community as a byproduct of how we are together. Because first and foremost, we're an educational trade school, and that's our model, is focus on education and economics. We will have residential members that are participating in that, but they're not the forefront of our focus. And I think that's what happens with a lot of the communities out there, is prioritizing the focus. So that's been a real balance for us. And that vetting process that I talked about is a real big part of how we bring anyone to the land. Because one of River's first kind of requirement pieces was to bring others on structure in place.
Yeah. And we did kind of trial periods, and we just like we'd been doing prior to the purchasing of the land, we'd been doing Zoom calls on a regular basis. We put out application through our platform, and we had people who'd been following us mostly because of the hemp building, had wanted to be part of what we're doing. So we did our first trial period in July for 2 weeks.
In July
For 2 weeks, and we kind of started building out a little bit of infrastructure, and then we went back to Texas in August, and then we came back full
everything
time.
up,
Yeah, packed everything up.
said our
Texas,
goodbyes,
and
moved the tiny home, which was super stressful.
yeah,
And then we got here in September and had a few weeks to start getting things organized before the members joined us. So there was lots of stuff to clean up. You can see some of the trash. We pulled things out because Charles, the previous land steward, left quite a bit of stuff, some treasures, some trash. We probably took out at least 4 or 5 huge truckloads of stuff. We built composting toilets so that we would have facilities for our members when they were coming. We repaired barns and built barn stairs. We made outdoor showers. We did.
Yeah, it was really about setting up this immediate infrastructure. As we said, there's some existing infrastructure, but it wasn't enough to bring people to the land to be able to actually function. and to start the build out process, because we have a whole schedule of what we want to build out, which we'll go into a little bit more. But the first phase was really, let's get this immediate infrastructure into place, make sure we have enough bathroom facilities, showers,
And
a
your
workshop
background
space.
as an architect and a builder being on site, you know that you need to basically, River was saying, we need to set up a base camp. We need to get temporary structures to get people on the land. So when we set up our budget, you know, when we purchased, we made the offer in June and we closed on the property on July 4th, which was intentional, and it was the full moon, and they were very confused. The people closing why we were doing that, but it was quite magical. And then we ended up coming on the property with the land steward here the end of July, went back to Texas, and then came back in September. But that part of that timeline was really to get some of these budgetary things in order so that we knew exactly what we were doing when we came to the
Right.
land. So we had those temporary structures at the first part of our to-do list. And so we did move the tiny hemp home. I mentioned that we have been working on that. River had all year long since we did the training. For some of you that haven't seen it, here's a little video. We're really excited about finally finishing her. We're super proud. River's done an amazing job. It is gorgeous. We're just working on getting it completely off grid. And I think the video is going to catch up a minute. Hopefully our internet will.
It's only around 220 square feet. It's really an example of the simple building material, and for people to experience that everything we've got in there, we've got hemp wool mattresses, we've got hemp wood flooring, we've got hemp wool insulation, hemp crates, repurposed materials. It was really an example of what's possible with this, because I think this thing with the natural building space is challenging for a lot of people to understand that you can have high quality homes. So we have that here as this model, and it's a great place and conversation space when people come to the land.
Well, it's essentially going to serve as a showcase in the Welcome Center. People will be able to book weekends in the Healthy Hemp Home to experience it firsthand. We'll be opening up guests in the spring, and we'll talk more about that. But in this map here, the tiny hemp home is just to the right of what's going to be the future cafe. That's a space that River and I are in right now doing this recording. But the thing that I also wanted to just mention is that we're now focused on getting the tiny hemp home off grid. So that'll be some of the stuff that we're rolling out now. So it'll be completely on solar with a compost toilet we had come in from England with a water tank system. So that some of the future things that we'll talk about, but
Right.
this is
Yeah.
more recent. Go
Right.
ahead.
So we've just been focusing on zone 1. And if anybody knows permaculture, you'll understand that this is the primary area to focus on when you first come to land. If you're a big construction company doing a big project, this may be called your base camp. So we've really been focusing on that, and that's extending and expanding the existing infrastructure to be able to manage and handle the workshop trainings that we're going to be doing, having space for storing materials, obviously food production, our energy systems and all of that. So this is that main hub. This was,
If you can actually just see back in that picture. So this was that we showed you before, the hoop house that wasn't covered. It was just the frame. So one of our really big projects that we're really excited about is we actually fixed the hoop house. We moved some of the ones from the
we
back one you can
combined
see
them
on the
together
top
to make
left.
one big one.
So we have a 100-foot hoop house where we'll be starting to grow food this winter, and we're keeping our chickens and ducks, and we'll talk about that. Some of our members were part of this project. It was really cool to really make this a usable space. And so as we were looking at building out the initial infrastructures to get people on the land, we were also thinking about the food security measures that we have to put in, and we've been doing both simultaneously. I would say Rivers, you know, as project managers, Rivers definitely focus more on the building, and I'm focused more on the food sovereignty piece of things, but we're working very closely together to make sure everything gets done. So that's part of our role here as trustees and as the project managers of this, you know.
Right. And I think that's one part we maybe
endeavor.
we didn't mention was that Haven Earth PMA, the way we set it up, is a project management arm, and we work alongside the Haven Village Trust, basically as the project
Well,
management
essentially,
team.
Haven Earth PMA is leasing the land and running all of the operations. So that's how we've set up that infrastructure so that we can keep the land in the trust and have that be part of it. And then you're starting to see some of our little animals that we got. And we're going to talk about animals because a lot of times when people go back to the land, first thing they do is get a lot of animals. And we've always told people, don't do that. And I don't want you guys to think that we did that. We're really strategic in how we've put some of these food security measures in place. We did acquire cows and chickens with the property. And some of the things that, we're looking at is what are the things that we want to make sure that we have in place. So planting orchards, getting the, food growing measures. You can see on the top left, we're preparing for our Mittlighter gardens in the spring. We have a spring, that picture on the bottom right, literally 1 mile as a crow flies right here that we can collect spring water from, in addition to the wells on the property. The water is really hard, so we do collect our spring water, and we're right on the Conasauga River. There's 3 rivers that come in here, and it's one of the purest, I think it's one of the top 4 purest rivers in the country. We were just on it yesterday, and it's incredibly beautiful area. But some of the things that we're thinking about is how are we going to have these things in place? So we know that we need to be learning things along the way, and all the animals that we've got are specific working animals that are part of this ecosystem that we're creating. So obviously rescued 2 little kittens. They're still quite little, but in top right, that'll be our barn cats. We've got 2 dogs. You guys know the Great Pyrenees. They are the
Farm guard dog.
farm guard dogs that they're amazing animals. They're not like any other dog I've ever met. But being able to really work with the goats that we have on the right, the 2 goats that we got are pregnant. They're due in a month or so. The cows that we had, one had a baby. We got some bunnies to use for the fertilizer. We obviously have chickens and acquired more, and we've got some ducks, but our latest is the 2 pigs that we just brought into as we took over the barn. But all of these are helping us, for those of us that are on the land, get into the rhythm of how we're going to be operating with the full food system piece of it. And it's a slow entry. We're not on overwhelm and overload. And again, we have multiple people here on the land. So it's a shared responsibility, because what happens a lot of times is people get on the land and they get overwhelmed and get kind of landlocked where they can't leave because there's so much to do. So part of our model is really sharing that and bringing others into that learning process. And a lot of that is the stuff that we need to do to be more resilient and more prepared for the times ahead. So we have a lot of off-grid features that we're here on the land as well, including the wood stove, cook stove that's in this structure, the solar panels that we mentioned. So we're obviously chopping wood and getting those kinds of things like in place. We finally purchased a vehicle to get around on the land. We were carrying wagons around for some time, so we moved up in Thanksgiving and got a vehicle, which has helped us move even faster. And one of the things that we didn't mention when River was talking about the master plan, because that area that's focus zone 1, often it looks like that's the land, but it's actually about less than 20% of the land. The 80% is what we're committed to keeping preserved, and our land is in a green belt, which is similar to like an agricultural exemption, except it's all forest. And so it's protected forest. And we had a forester come out, show us what's here on the land, what we need to do to maintain and keep that land healthy, and also to keep our greenbelt application. So that was really informative. And the previous land steward has also been really resourceful. He's actually part of our faculty, and we're in connection with him, which is another amazing asset that most people don't have. So we talked about all that other stuff that came with the land, but having that connection, like literally when River, we were doing excavation and they hit the pipes in 2 different places, we could call them and say, hey, where do you think this is on the land? Or what do we need to know about this well that, is, or all of these kinds of things. Because there were a bunch of water tanks on the land and other things that it's helpful to learn about from him. And in addition to that, he knows every plant and mushroom that grows on this land and is really excited to share all of his foraging. That he's going to be coming back in the spring to do our hemp build workshop, and so he'll be doing some mushroom forcing and river rafting with any of our members here that want to do that.
Nice.
So I think it was important to note that, because, you know, sometimes when you see all this excavation going on, if you guys are following us on Instagram or Telegram, we've been posting some of the videos. We are doing a lot of earthworks, and I think it's really important to note that it's going in relationship with the land in the way that River talked about, like where it is naturally aligned.
Yeah, and this area is right next to, I know it's probably hard for you all to kind of understand where everything is on the land, but this is right in that zone 1 area. Just outside the picture to the left is where our existing infrastructure is. And so really it's about, you know, the challenge actually would come into the land, or I've been working with a lot of clients over time. If you have an existing structure on your land and you're looking to develop something else on your land, it's really challenging to see what's not there already. It's hard to see beyond what you already have. And so what was really important was to reorientate everything around a feature. And we had a permaculture consultant come out in September, I think. And
No, July.
in July, actually, yeah. And also the previous land steward had remarked that this certain location would be a great location for a pond. It was where the water was naturally catching, coming down from the hills. And it actually was hard to manage that water because so much of it was coming down to that area. And so I wasn't sure at the time that that was the right thing to do, because I know coming from Texas, building a pond was like you know, you need to take a mortgage out just to build a pond. But when we came here and we started building relationships with local excavation company and people locally, we found out that building the pond wouldn't actually be that big a deal. So we endeavored to build a pond and reorientate things to that pond. So we have a tiny hemp home down there. Move on. And we have guest glamping and other things. And you can see from this picture how that all starts to kind of fit together. That pond's already half full right now. It's holding water really well. It's not lined. It's just a
We
clay.
have a lot of clay.
It's a really beautiful clay here on the land. So we're reorientating. We have guest glamping cabins here. And strategically, the way we've done the guest glamping cabins, you can buy them with a metal frame, but we bought them without that, so we could put a door on it, our own lockable doors, and we built a wood frame structure around it on a insulated wood frame deck. And the idea is that this, you know, the glamping cabins themselves, the canvas has a lifetime, but once that's through, we can actually hemp these structures. We can use them in a workshop. We could, you know, do 1-week workshops and hemp these structures and make them into hemp cabins, which could last for decades. So we're really thinking out into the future, all of the things that we're selecting to put on the land here. And then as you can see further up, we've got these yurt structures, which we thought long and hard about. And we went and stayed in different yurts to see the experience of that, because I think what's primary is, you know, we're really around building healthy homes. You know, an ecological aspect to what we're doing, which is really important. And I think there's a lot of people probably on this call who feel like that's a big component to creating a positive future. So we're really careful about that. But all in all, the speed to be able to get these structures up is really, really important. And we found and we connected and started making these connections and local partnerships with local excavation people,
Electricians, plumbers,
all of the tradespeople that, you know, in the beginning, before we came here, we're unsure what that was going to look like. You know, especially now in this post-COVID world, there's really a challenge to find people who actually want to work. So we weren't sure about that, and that's kind of primarily why we had set things up so we'd have an on-site build team. But we have been really pleasantly surprised, and it continues to this day. Every day really is to the quality of people, the alignment of the local people we're finding here who really value what we're bringing to this area. It's really been a kind of spiritual experience, I think, for us
absolutely.
to really connect with people. Our excavation person who's doing all the excavation land, he used to hunt on this land with his dad and hunt squirrels when he was a kid on the land. He has his own church. He's a pastor. He has a church up in the mountains, and he does our excavation work. So we feel there's like a holiness and a holy
He has
element
the
to
original allodial title on that land where the church is. So there's this,
yeah.
there is this understanding of this unspoken language, but the amount of resources, all of them that are coming here are really from this area, know each other. We've worked together on numerous projects, and they're actually super excited to be on this project and grateful. And we feel super blessed beyond measure to have such a warm reception. It's like that if you had one of the things that you would want in an area is to make sure that you are having and building these, especially during these times, these kinds of relationships, which are based on trust. And that's something that River and I really make a point to do when we come to any area, is to start building up these local partnerships and really build trust. And so it's paying off even beyond our wildest expectations. And it's one of the ways that we're able to move fast. So for example, the last couple of weeks, we've been managing 5 different teams. So we have our team of electricians because we've had to upgrade both of our power systems. We've had the excavation team working while the others are building the yurts, while our local build, our on-site build team is finishing up the projects with the glamping tents and building some of our off-grid hot tub and sauna, which was really important. And some of those things. And then we've had, the other people that are coming in and out as far as doing deliveries, sourcing the materials locally. There's a lot of lumber yard. Obviously, there's a lot of wood here. The price in Tennessee has been much better than other areas that we've looked at, even though the price of everything has gone up. So there was a lot to that has been really amazing. So this is an aerial shot that River did when he first came out in April. So I just want to show you guys kind of the lushness of the land. And I'm going to see if I can forward this because this is a little bit of a long video. Let me just see if I can manage this. Oh gosh. Great. This is I'm gonna have to go through all of these again because we definitely don't want to show you all 7 minutes, but we wanted to give you like an aerial view of what is going on. Let's see if I can do this. Okay.
Well, it's handy to have our tech.
We've got somebody else. All right. It's just not letting me do that though.
So when you
That's
go
the
down.
problem. It's like in this thing. Okay. I think I'm gonna have to, we definitely don't want you guys to watch this whole thing. Oh my gosh. I see. We do this. This is the challenge of doing them. I'm gonna see if I can exit and show you guys that way. Stop the screen share. Because River, you can talk while I do some tech stuff.
Yeah, I think it's been really important, as we said, we're an educational model, an educational center, and that's a big part of what we're doing. So being able to document our process along the way is really critical. Because a lot of people are obviously interested in alternative systems right now. How we navigate things in a world that is.
So this is the only way I'm going to be able to show you guys that you see it, because I don't want to go through the whole thing. I'll try to make my screen as big as possible, but actually I could probably do this.
No, you can't.
Okay. What we're trying to show you guys is this kind of before and after. So you can see that we're surrounded by forest, clearly, and this is the point. Okay, so this is where the zone 1, where to go? Zone 1, right here. So that's what it was looking at last April when we were coming into that area. So again, you see the barn, the hoop house is uncovered, the kitchen, the workshop area. And that field to the right was where the cows were. And that's that area now that you're seeing. That's the pond, the yurts, the glamping tents. Walks through to what we're calling the fairy forest, where my son-in-law proposed to my daughter. I am expecting to be a grandma in the new year, just putting that out there. They proposed in the fairy forest, and he's the one that painted that mural in the beginning. But just so you can kind of see that, and then I'm just gonna fly you over the area. So we go over this adorable little fairy forest right there, that pond that's spring fed. There's a road that goes through our property. And then you're coming back around here. And we're just this kind of before and after. So we'll show you, because we took one yesterday that will show you more of where we're at now. But you can see, so now at this point, you're coming in around where we're calling the Pioneer Village, which is the first 12 structures, that the healthy hemp homes that we're building, the first 4 starting
So
in this.
this is, just kind of projecting. We've been talking about, what we've been doing so far to get established our initial infrastructure on the land. And that will continue until the spring. That's really our metric to get all of that ready and in place so we can be growing food. We have the animals set up. We'll have our energy set up. We'll have the off-grid systems where we've been, we'll talk a little bit more about that and the off-grid systems. Why did you do that?
I thought it would pick up that place, but it didn't. Keep going.
So this area here on the master plan is one of the prime areas to build, and is going to be this pioneer village, which is really going to be we have about a carrying capacity at this point of about 40 dwellings, 40 residential units on the land, which is being based around quarter-acre lots, half-acre, and 1-acre lots. This is the Pioneer Village, which is about 12 quarter-acre lots, garden lots, as we call them in England. And this is starting to go off in the other areas of the land.
Taking you for a ride.
Get to explore.
Just to say too, one of the things that we're aware of with the trust is interested in the land surrounding us is forest and other large properties. So we are obviously set the intention to acquire more land in the future for more residential opportunities. But the location of the land was really important to make sure that there was nothing else infringing around us. 200 acres is a lot, but we still want a bigger buffer around us to make sure that there's not other development things coming in, that we wouldn't want to be next to. So, and I'm sure all of you can understand and relate to that.
Right. This is on,
and you'll see no EMF, no towers around. That was the other thing on our
no towers around, and this is a 1-acre pond that's on the other side of the road. And this is kind of going to remain type of a park area because it's one of the best views from a lot of the locations, the build locations. And so just talking about that Pioneer Village is really about, that's going to be the first homes we build, and that's going to be taken on over the next 18 months from the spring by the Haven Earth Trade School. So we're going to use them first small builds, 1 to 2 bedroom, around 900 square foot homes as the training for the Haven Earth Trade School. So we'll be bringing people in, we'll bring groups in to do workshops and trainings on the hemping part of the project. Already we found our foundation people locally. They're going to be putting in a foundation, if you can see, right, where them clump of trees at the bottom, the images is going to be our maker space, which is going to be essentially a 3,000 square foot workshop building we're going to be putting across there, which will down the road after development is finished become part of the community and become like a maker space for crafts and for pottery and all of that. But during the construction phase is going to be like where we store materials, where we have tools, where we do all that. So we're looking at things in multiple ways, right? We've got the future timeline when it's built out and it has a more residential feel. And then we have this initial phase, which is the build out phase, which is more, in a regular development, a contractor comes and they manage a whole project, right? So the developer buys a piece of land, contractor comes on and spends 3 years, 5 years, however long it takes to build out a bunch of homes. We're doing it a little bit differently, where we're really bringing in people in the early stages into our zone 1, which you can see here now.
So this is, as of yesterday, what the land looks like. You saw the lushness of last April with all the green, which will all come back. But this is starting with that zone 1 where the barn, hoop house, and the yurt village and the guest
Right.
camping.
So from this zone, we can bring in people for workshops. We can start making an economy on the land. Making an economy on the land is fundamental to success. This idealistic kind of approach to coming back to the land and thinking, oh, you know, nature's just going to provide everything for us is a far stretch of the imagination, and has been the demise of a lot of community efforts around the world that I've seen. So really, the setting up a really feasible economic structure. So you can pause it.
Right.
So you can see the little tiny hemp home down there, which is kind of front facing as a little visitor center, and then people can come stay in there as an Airbnb. And then I can't go back because of this thing.
Don't touch.
We're obviously bringing paths in. We're starting to take down some fences, open up some areas, so it starts to connect all these different areas together.
So the pond's on the right, and we're about to fly over the road where River was just mentioning the makerspace and the pioneer villages right there in the far distance. So you can see the excavation that's happening. It'll loop back around.
See this kind of brown area on the left there. We've excavated that area, and we have our foundation people coming in. Adam and the crew are coming in on Wednesday to lay down the foundation, and then we'll be pouring concrete for that. Which for workshop space, there's not many options to do in it any other way. And we are looking at alternatives in our structures, and we're in talks with a really awesome hemp company that is producing a structural hemp material that we might be using. But there's lots of other things in the mix. So this is going to be we already have the building. It's a Quonset hut. It's 2,700 square foot. And the great thing about that, I can put it up pretty quickly and get it sealed in a fairly short space of time. So we'll have that ready for the springtime to start building out. What the great thing about is there's a lot of issues right now internationally and in the US of getting equipment. The supply chain is kind of broken. If you speak to a lot of people who are in the energy sector, all of that, the supply chain is really vulnerable right now. So to get power over to this side of the road, we actually need a business. They won't bring us power. The electric company won't bring us power. They don't have enough transformers. So we have to actually have a structure over there. So we worked it out that this structure would be our business front, and we can bring power there. So we can start establishing that part of it. We're using
and ensure that we have power before it's not available.
Right. So that's going to go in there, and we're doing the earthworks because we actually want to make use of the slope, so we can actually kind of semi-hide that structure. That's a big part of the way we're designing, is that we're actually adding value to the nature rather than taking it away. You know, you'll see any developer, the first thing they do is just clear the land, flatten it as much as possible. But really that's not the way we operate. There was no trees in this area to take down. That was already like that. And then the off-grid solutions, Marnie, maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, you'll see that the tiny homes there in the top, we've just installed the water tank. We've
The
got
rainwater
a
catchment.
rainwater catchment, and that's also gone on the barn. Next week, we'll have someone come out to do the gutters. We had the off-grid, stovetop that we talked about. We're working with Sean from Hack My Homestead with the solar panels that we have, how to best use those, but also to get the other structures, not necessarily off grid, but to be able to have backup systems in place. So we'll set up the pumps for the wells that we have. We've looked at acquiring other things like the hot tub and sauna are off grid. So we'll be able to have water, we'll be able to have heat, we'll be able to cook. That's an off grid cooking stove that the bottom is a grill that we can obviously use for guests and be able to cook. So we've really been strategic in the ways that we're looking at what things do we need to have in place. The compost toilets are on the bottom right, and being able to, stock wood, but that's going to be an ongoing thing that we're going to be sharing with you guys as we go along, learning and implementing at the same time. So we're really excited to open up our first spring semester, planning to have that started in mid-April 15th, but bringing members on and potential residential members and guests on March 15th for the spring equinox, where we'll finish the Hempel, and we'll be sharing all of the updates from the land, and people will actually be able to be on the land with us. So we're really excited to have people come visit. Many of you have been reaching out to us, and we are currently getting our website up where you'll be able to book. There will be specifics around that. Everyone that comes onto the land has to be a member. You can become a member for the $22 a month. That will allow you to come onto the land. Obviously, you have to sign our guest guidelines and our liability waivers, again, because we're staying within the private realm. But we want to invite people to experience what we're doing, whether it's through a workshop or looking at potential residential membership, or just people that are curious to want to see how the model is working so that they can implement it. So there'll be limits on how people can't just drop in whenever. There's going to be scheduled times that will be available when people can come to the land to be able to experience it with us. But we're really happy to call Tennessee home, and really feel grateful and blessed of all of you that have been supporting us along the way, and for all of the divine orchestration and miracles that the universe has really led us to this particular moment in time, because we feel like this is something that River and I are literally just showing up for. It's that it's beyond, it is a spiritual experience, and it's beyond what we both knew on some level, but having the ability to just be living it out and sharing it with all of you along the way has just been
Right.
been amazing. So
Right. And I think we all probably had an awareness of shift change needed, and maybe an awareness that these are the times and that's going to happen. These are opportune times for that. There is so much opportunity that I don't think was existed before, that exists right now to do this model, to do this work. And there's an opening in a lot of people in the consciousness on the planet for a change. And obviously it takes the old things breaking down and deconstructing for that to happen. And I think what's really important is that this is a time of joy. Actually, this is we're not trying to set up a model of running away from something. And I think that was really key to understand, like a lot of what people might call intentional communities, which we try not to use in any way, because it conjures up so many different things for different people. That was based on running away from something. And I think we're actually creating something. And, we kind of go back to Buckminster and his saying, if something's broken, don't try to fix it, create a new one. But I was saying the other day, is like, have a bit of a spin on that. It's like, if something's broken, don't try to fix it. Don't create a new one. Actually learn the lessons from the one that's broken. Really, that's the gem, and that's the gold in all of this, the alchemy of processing what's happened and what's deconstructing. Because it's, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is so much value in what we've all brought to the table generationally for generations to create the place where we're at now. And it's actually like we're being distracted to think that it's falling apart. Actually, it's really all coming together right now. And this is an amazing opportunity, and
amazing
it's
time.
reaffirmed for us all the time in how we're being accepted, and how so many people are aligning with this. And we say with our members, there's a resonance. And that's what they all say, is like, there's a resonance with all the people that are coming into this space. Something about something that's changed in us, that we're magnetizing each other. And we're not providing, I wouldn't say we're not providing a solution. We're just charging ahead on a path and having faith in that this is the right thing to do right now. And all the things that are happening around us shows that we're totally on point with that. And there's a reason that all of you showed up today, because there's a part of you as well that knows that this is the times that we were born for. And, you know, we are the ones that are going to make these changes. So I'm getting a little preachy here.
We are a ministry of nature.
We're the Ministry of Nature, and it is New Year's Day.
Mhm.
And it's the beginning of 2024, which seems like it's going to be quite a year. Really appreciate you all
Taking the time.
taking the time to come on and, you know, kind of witness us kind of fumbling our way through this a little bit. We're just so busy with life on the land and all of the things we're doing that putting together these kind of presentations is really extra for us, is a lot. We really don't stop. We go nonstop.
But we know that it's really important to document, and we are grateful for our members, like, so that we can keep that communication going, because we know that there's something bigger than all of us that's happening, and that's really important for us to keep sharing with others. And so it actually helps us. It's kind of a cathartic thing to be able to share, because I think when you go to the land, you can get lost in that, you know, and because you can get consumed by the busyness and the to-do list and all that. So it's what we realized. And when we went and spoke at the Self-Reliance Festival a couple weeks ago, or whenever that was,
Months ago.
that when we left the land and had that time, it was really important for us to do that we can't lose sight, because we were doing, you know, for the last year, we were out there talking about and presenting and going through all these ideas. And now that we're putting it into action and really here on the land, it's equally important to make sure for us to hold ourselves accountable to continue to build those relationships and do that work, because this is what's needed right now. And people need these models. They need hope. They need inspiration. They need to see what's possible. And, you know, we're just one of many that are out there trying to rebuild this memory within all of us, that we know that this is what we came here to do. So know all of you are dreaming this into existence and planting your own seeds. And if we can help nourish and nurture that along the way, we're really grateful to be able to do that. So I'm going to stop the recording. Happy New Year, everyone. We really, really appreciate you being here with us, and we'll stay on for some questions. So hold on.